retiring councillor is Councillor Butcher. And Councillor Butcher has served for 3 terms, so I will read the citation or the motion that the Council record its sincere thanks to Fliss Butcher for the loyal and conscientious service given to the City of Dunedin as a member of the Dunedin City Council for 9 years during the period 2004 to 2013. The Council extends sincere appreciation for the services rendered and every good wish for the future. And Councillor Butcher has distinguished herself in 2 areas, it seems to me. One is a very strong advocate for environmental issues, and the other is raising the consciousness of the mana whenua sector of our community. I commend you for that. Thank you for your service.
Second.
Would you like to speak?
I was going to second the motion first.
Oh, that's a good idea. Councillor Wilson seconded it. Now, Councillor Wilson.
Fliss, thank you very much. When I first came on council, you reached out and assisted in understanding the process, which I'm very grateful for, and probably didn't understand the need for nearly enough at the time. But it's often what people don't see the work you do, and I've really enjoyed working with you on the first Community Resilience Forum. It was initially, and then also on the Craigieburn, and the work you did then. And it's not often seen, that sort of work that we do behind the scenes, and I really appreciate your work that you did there collegially and out of sight. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hunt.
Fliss, for the last 9 years, although I knew you before that, Andy, and I've really enjoyed working with you. And particularly the 3 years that we had worked together as Chair and Deputy Chair of Community Development. And the commitment that you made, to trying to look after the people of this city. And it's already been commented on that that's the most important thing, is the people. For the last 3 years, we've worked together on a number of resource consents, and a number of resource consents where we didn't necessarily agree, but we certainly worked together as a team, and I appreciate the effort that you've put in to support the people of this city. And I wish you all the best in your future political endeavours in the community north of Dunedin, and very good luck for that.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Fliss. Good luck for the next round, and I've enjoyed being a colleague of yours here too. You've always been entertaining, I might just add, delicately, yes, but you've had some pretty unusual ideas, sometimes out of left field, but they have been quite strongly put forward, and you've got us thinking on a number of different events, and they've been jolly good company. And I think of reflection, and thank God I never crossed you in debate, because I would have come off second best, I know that. So you've been entertaining and enjoyable, and I hope you've enjoyed your time with us here as well. Thank you.
Councillor Act.
Thank you, Worship. Plus, we were elected at the same time, and by the sounds of it, our first photo on council is going to be the same as our last photo on council. But I'd just like to acknowledge the hearings committees that for some reason the 2 of us ended up on, one of them being John Wilson Drive, but I'm not even going to go into that. But we came from different sort of aspects to that, but we ended up, I think, in a very, very strong position, even though the rest of the council didn't listen to us. But the one that I think we had a real win on was the playground upgrades. And when the playground upgrades came up for its own special consultative process, and we had a lot of submissions, and it was just amazing how much time with the budget we had it was going to take to get certain playgrounds upgraded. And at the end of the day, between us, we managed to get the budget doubled, which meant that the rate of playground upgrades was going to go forward twice as fast. So just a couple of little things that I recall, and thank you very, very much for all of your work.
Councillor McTavish.
Thank you, Bishop. Fliss, even before I was on council, I appreciated the work that you were doing, and now having been on council for 3 years, in what I imagine is probably a slightly more open environment than the one that you first entered in terms of the ideas that you were promoting, I can appreciate how much effort and how much courage must have been required to articulate some of the things that you did in those early years. Like the Mayor, I think you will be remembered here for your focus on promoting those environmental concepts, but not just that. I think that you've got a very empathetic approach that you bring to the work that you do in the governance capacity, and in particular, I think that came through, for example, on dealing with the John Wilson Drive issue, where you were quite, you understood the needs of older people and you were willing to take those into account when you came to your final recommendations. I know that you've been through a tough time over the last 3 years, but your passion hasn't waned, and I can see that. And I've been lucky enough to inherit chairships of some of the committees that you, in some cases, pioneered, which the Community Sustainability Panel was the one that Councillor Wilson referred to, which I've inherited, and certainly I feel that the work that, or the contribution that I've been able to make as a councillor has very much been on the basis that you have established for that work to continue. So, yeah, very, very much appreciated from a younger female councillor.
Councillor Wetherall.
Thank you, sir. Fliss, it's interesting that we built on one side of Fliss and the other. We talk about John Wilson Drive. I must be the silent partner out there, but it's okay. I've had the privilege of being involved in many working parties with Fliss, also for university, a number of consents, and I guess as I sit here and reflect today, maybe not enough Fliss when I look back and just think of the passion and the knowledge and the input that you have. But sir, the comment I wish to pay is a compliment to Fliss. Through our arrangement in the Edinburgh room, I've had the privilege to sit next to Fliss for quite a lot of meetings, and certainly here in council for the last period. Her advice and her encouragement to me, by way of think about this, think about that, what are you going to vote, what are you going to do, why don't you support this, why don't you support that? I loved it all, I really did. Thank you, Fliss. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Worship. Fliss, I just wanted to say, when I first came into council, I suppose I had fairly narrow views, and it's people like yourself. Yes, surprise, surprise. But it's people like yourself who help to expand other councillors' views, and particularly, as the Mayor's already mentioned and other speakers, about your passion for the environment, and also your passion for recycling and the appropriate waste management in that solid waste area. And I can recall the working party that you and I, Teresa and Leah McBay, were on, developing the first resource recovery waste management strategy, and essentially you and Leah wrote the report, wrote the document for council. I was just there chairing it, directing the traffic, so to speak, and of course now that role's been taken over by Councillor McTavish in the latest document. But no, I really appreciate the guidance you gave me on those areas of passion that you really had close to your heart. Thank you.
Councillor Bazet.
Courage, passion, committed, yes, all of those. And like Neil, I've always been a little bit nervous about approaching, because I just wasn't quite sure how it was all going to end up. But no, all those things, Fliss, you've been very dedicated, thinking outside the square, as Andrew has said. You sort of stretch the boundaries, and I really do appreciate that. I think that was good. You've been good for this council, because it's quite a conservative council. Most councils are, and you have, through your sheer personality and your drive, just had the guts to go that little bit further. And I, for one, appreciate that. I wish you all the best for the future in your new role.
Plus, my memories of you is that you always had one passion when you come onto council, and that was gender representation. And you never let go. And the number of times that I could hear your voice around the table, come on guys, give us a break. And I think we heard that quote a number of times. So you never gave up on that passion. But I had great respect for you from the issue that when people have health issues, they usually have it in private, and they're hard enough to deal with in private. And your health issues became a public issue because of your public life. And the way you dealt with those, to me, speaks volumes of your personality and your ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Fliss. I didn't want to speak with each councillor, so I'd like to speak now. Fliss was the lucky one in the middle and a woman, so I thought I'd like to speak in this particular spot. But I'd like to take this time to say thank you to all of you, to Bill, to Sid, Fliss, to Neil and to Colin, and to say that you've all got really good hearts. And to me that's the most valuable thing about you, that you've got valuable hearts and that you're very, very valuable people. And politics is not an easy place. It's actually quite a hard climate to be in. And it's not a normal workplace in any sense. It can be terribly harsh. And yet you've all been very quietly supportive of me at times when I've found it hard. And I'd like to think that I've been supportive of you too. And that shows me that you're people with good hearts. And that is the most valuable thing of all. Whether it's the little things like when my grandma didn't have long hair and Sid and his wife would give me lifts hitchhiking, or whether it's Neil, you always got a word to say. Never walk into a room and feel lonely because you always say something. You know, we've all been there for each other when we feel vulnerable. Bill, Fliss and Colin, I know you have all been very supportive of me, and I'd like to think that I've always been there for you too. So, to me that's the most valuable thing about all of you, is that you're very human and that you've given a lot to me, and I'd like to thank you, and I know that you're valuable people and you will continue to be valuable people as you go out into the community. Maybe that's in politics, but maybe that's not, because you've still got a lot to give, and you've got it in you to give it, and so thank you.
Councillor Butcher. Floor is yours.
Cool, blimey, my head is just so big. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Takatimu te waka, ko Kakanui te manga, ko Waitaki te awa, ko Ngāti Whatua te iwi, ko Ngāti Pakiha te hapu, ko Norman te koru, ko Audrey te mama, ko Juniper, Jasper, Max, Elsie, Oscar, Jack, Johnny, Cora, Rafferty, Nico, te Mokapuna. Ko Ian, Putane. Ko Fliss, aho. So I greet you once, I greet you twice, I greet you 3 times, and during that process I bring the spirits of my ancestors into this room with me to ground myself. And Pam, you can start the clock now.
There is no time limit, Councillor.
I know. I'm sorry, couldn't resist. So, well, that was really lovely. Thank you, everybody, for all those lovely, kind things that you've said. I just want to thank all the councillors around the room who are here today and the ones that have had to leave early for some strange reason before I spoke. It's been my privilege to get to know you all and to work with you. I know I haven't been that effective in the last 3 years, but I sort of figured that the first 3 years might have made up for that. There are a few people that I want to single out in my little speech, and seeing I'm not on a time limit, I'm going to do this. I sincerely want to thank Peter Chin, because he was a wonderful mayor and a good friend and so supportive of me when I came in as a silly, naive, crazy, feminist, radical, environmentalist person, and Peter just took it all in its stride. And the number of times I would go to Peter in the first sort of few months, and go, oh, I've got this really crazy idea, and I'd go, I want to start a time bank, and he'd go, how much is it going to cost? And I said, it won't cost you anything. And he said, go and do it. And then as I'd walk out the door, he'd say, oh, let me know if you want a hand with anything. So during some of those processes and some of those projects that I started to get off in those early years, Peter was always there in the background if I needed to go and talk to him about a legal issue or something. He was always really supportive. There was the other thing that he supported me on when we did the urban design competition, Dunedin's Best Building, to celebrate the year of urban design. I said to Peter, I've got this really crazy idea, and he'd go, how much is it going to cost? And I'd say, it won't cost you anything. In fact, I'll go and get sponsorship. And I did. I got really good sponsorship for that competition. And there was a book published, and it just really helped me as a councillor figure out this whole thing about urban design and where heritage sat in the whole mix of it. It was great. The other thing he also supported us on was, believe it or not, gorilla knitting and the Warm Up a Tree project that we did in the Octagon to celebrate the International Year of Biodiversity. I said to Peter, so we're going to do this. And he said, how much will it cost? And I said, it won't cost you anything because Colin's paying for it through the Biodiversity Fund, but come and do some knitting. And he came to the meeting and he sat down with some of the staff in cars. You probably don't know this, Paul. And he knitted. We were knitting peggy squares so that when the day came, the coldest day of the year, we could get out in the Octagon and rack the poor old trees up because they were having a bit of a hard time, the poor old trees. And it just looked fantastic. And all of those blankets at the end of the day, they were taken down and they were remade and they were given to, I can't remember the name, Presbyterian Support of somebody, and they were turned into really nice blankets and given away through the food bank. So none of it was wasted and it didn't cost Peter Chin anything. I'd also like to thank Paul Hudson, who, as the Chair of Community Development, while I was the Deputy Chair, was a wonderful mentor to me. Boy, we used to have some fun in those meetings, didn't we? We used to have so many laughs, but we were active as well. And Paul he pushed me into things and said, you can do this, you look after that. It just didn't push me too far, but just made sure that I was in a space where I could handle it confidently to do some of the things that needed to be done. So I thank you for that. Colin and Bill, you guys were awesome on John Wilson Drive. I really got to know Bill in that process, and we came at it from different angles, but I think that we got what we wanted, and during that process became friends. And when I came back to council after my leave of absence, you guys were just there. You had my back, and I'll never forget you for that. Thank you. So I know everybody's been really supportive, but I'm only just going to pick out a few of these people because these are the things that are in my head at the moment. I'm really proud of some of the policies that I managed to get through from the beginning. For example, the heritage policy. I think that was something Bill and I sat on with Michael Guest, and Michael was just hopeless, and Bill and I argued, but we got there in the end, we really got there in the end, and now because of that we've got Glenn working for us, and this council has truly committed to this town, this city being a heritage city, so I'm really proud of that. I'm obviously also proud of the environmental sustainability being integrated throughout the whole of council's policies. I sat on the Coastal Dunes Reserves panel. That was a real eye-opener to the relevance of coastal dunes to the city and how important they are. Social housing, that was also something I actually stood for. I stood on the environmental plank and to social housing to make sure that the social housing policy got to a point where it really needed to be and that the citizens were heard and it was set in stone, and I'm hoping for God's sake that it stays in stone. And moving right on, I'm not crying, I've just got a snotty nose. Moving right along from that, and he's not here, is he? No, he's not, he's gone. I was just going to say thank you to Robert Clark and the property team, because the commitment that Robert gave through to me on the social housing policy and his understanding of how important social housing is to some of the more vulnerable people in the city. I think that was really, really good that he could do that, especially when he came in late. I also want to acknowledge Nicola. I see she's in the back there. I've seen you grow as a person in your career since I first came on here, and I think it's really fantastic that you've been allowed through your general managers to be able to do that, how you've picked up the slack a number of times and people just were left and you just had to get in there and do that extra work. I think that's fantastic. The GSOs, oh my God, Pammy, Jenny, Linny, the others, Rebecca when she was GSOing. You guys are fantastic. You've always been really supportive. So professional, Pam. I don't know what this council would do with that. My goodness. You've just been fantastic. Carolyn Howard and the team in finances, fantastic. And I want to mention, special mention to Karen Bain, who is now in planning, but when she was a GSO, she was there for me in some of those really dark moments in the early years of my councillorship that maybe somebody might have just mentioned beforehand about being a bit rude to me, yes. But that's okay, we're focusing on the positive. Both of you were a bit poking your tongue out once, I remember that. Sandy, I don't know, love you, you're fantastic. Once again, this place, and I go on about gender balance, but you know, there's some really good women here. There's some great men, but there are some fantastic women here that work their A's off for this council and for this city. And when people go on about the staff of Bloomin' Council, boy, it makes me mad, because I know how hard you guys work behind the scenes. All of you work really hard. It's just, you know, they don't understand. General managers, Sue, love you too. Tony, we haven't always got on, you and I, but that's fine. We're in a good space now, and you're a good man, I know that, and I know you work your heart out for the city as well. Paul, my homeboy, haven't got to know you that well, but hey, you've just done an amazing job for the city, and I was pleased that I could have been part of that team that decided that we should employ you, because it was a really good decision. And so, yes, and thank you to all the people who voted for me in the last three elections as well. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. And finally, to my other homeboy, Ian. Ian and I have been on the verge of divorce for the last 24 years. He's hung in there with me. He's been my rock. He's been fantastic. When my mum died, it was just like Ian and I against the world, and it was fantastic. And I want to go out on a really good, positive note for the city. Ian and I were invited to go to a 1 year anniversary of a new business last Friday, Immersions, for Sarah and her business. Have been operating for a year, and we went to this party down in Bond Street area, which we're all thinking is going to be this fantastic spot. And this room, well, I tell you, we were probably, well, he was the oldest, I wasn't, I was probably the second oldest, full of these amazing young Dunedin business people going for it. She's now got 9 people working for her. She's doing some amazing stuff. So people who say to me, oh, there's nothing happening in Dunedin, get stuck. There's heaps happening here. Young people staying here in the city who want to work in those heritage buildings and do their thing. And I think that's fantastic. So thank you very much, everybody. And you might be seeing some more of me.
Put the motion of appreciation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Fliss.
Oh, I get one as well.
Our next retiring councillor, sometimes known as the grandfather of the council, Councillor Collins. 22 years I've worked out in total, but it spans a longer period than that, and I shall read the motion of appreciation. That the council recorded sincere thanks to Neil Collins for the loyal and conscientious service given to the City of Dunedin as member of the Dunedin City Council for 22 and a half years during the period 1989 to 1998 and 2000 to 2013. The Council extends sincere appreciation for the services rendered and every good wish for the future. And 22 years is a very long, 22 and a half. 23. Inflation. Neil is known for his wry comments around. They don't come very often, but they're very wry. And I've enjoyed lots of lunches with you, Neil. And Neil has the other distinction of being the only person on council who can get an appointment with the Prime Minister pretty much at the drop of a hat. So I will move that from the chair, and second, Councillor Weatherall. Would someone like to, anyone? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Neil, in his early days at council, when I came on council, it was very hard to get Neil to turn up to a briefing or anything like that. So we devised a plan that we would put on a meal and Neil would turn up. And that was very obvious that it worked. But it also worked in another way, because you'd be sitting there enjoying this meal or snack to eat, and you'd be listening to the radio in the background, and he's still working at Radio Dunedin. So he used the technology to actually cover for him while he came to council. But I think Neil will probably be recognised around the community as someone that brought the community's concerns through the media to the council table. He certainly gave us, as councillors, the temperature of what the issues of the day were out in the community. And I think probably if there ever was an achievement that somebody did achieve going through council, and that was Neil's success in the policy arrangement and the parking for senior citizens. So I think he really won the hearts of senior citizens there. I always reckoned that he had a conflict of interest, but he certainly achieved a parking concession for senior citizens, and he was a great colleague for everybody that sat around this council table. You could always have some jovial moments with him, and he always made sure that we had a good social committee that organised social events, and he certainly knows the restaurants around town to choose. So thank you, Neil, for your association.
Sure.
Councillor Bazet.
Well, I'm sorry to see you go, Neil. You're really iconic in Dunedin with your radio program. You're just so well known, and of course that was thrown at you very often. That was the reason why you got onto the council, and it probably helped. There'd be no question about that. But you have been a wonderful servant for the people of Dunedin, and I can go back further than Councillor Brown. I can remember when you were the ward councillor for the Peninsula Ward, when that was first. It was you and I think David Benson Pope, and then you stood in the South Dunedin Ward, and you've been successful over those many years. And the reason why you were successful is because you were a very good councillor. And I would remind people around the table that Neil hasn't always been old. When he was much younger, he was still supporting older people, because that's where he came from. He never forgot his roots. He was a South Dunedin boy, or a South Ward boy, and he looked after those people in that South Ward. And he's won, I don't know how many, maybe 2 or 3 service medals, and has been recognised nationally, and I congratulate you on that, and they've been well deserved. I think the time you've spent on the committees, you've always come through with some wise decisions, and that's been your trademark really from the time you first came onto the council. I've appreciated your friendship. You and I have been mates for a long time, and we've had a lot of fun. We don't seem to have as much fun these days, Neil, as we used to. I'm just not quite sure whether there's a mix around the table. Due respects to everybody, but some of the times that we used to have in the snug in the early days were a bit of a hoot, and I certainly miss them. But we'll no doubt see you about, Neil, and I look forward to catching up with you on the odd social occasion, and all the best for the future.
Councillor Hudson.
Neil probably knows more about the people of Dunedin and the history of Dunedin than all of us put together. And Neil, we're going to miss your breadth of knowledge and your wise counsel, because you've always been there to provide guidance and provide advice. And I think more than most of the councillors, you're probably one of the most approachable, kind people that I suspect has sat around this council table over these years. Inevitably, when you get onto council, your family get involved, and over the years the commitment from Mason and Chris as your sons to support you in your council role, and more latterly I think Chris, has been very, very important for you, because you need that balancing, I think, of the next generation to know the recommendations that you need to support around this council table. And I'm not going to tell any funny stories about you, Neil, although I know a few over the years, except when I saw you come earlier, I was reminded of an incident with one of the council's recycling bins, where you were trying to push more rubbish into it than perhaps it was ready to hold, and the consequences of that. But we're going to miss you, Neil, and thank you very, very much for the service that you've given and the support that your family have given.
Councillor Moon.
Thank you, Worship. Firstly, Neil, just want to thank you for your support as Deputy Chair of IS between 04 and 07. I think we made a pretty good team. Others have already spoken about your sense of what the feeling is out there in the community on issues, and I think, to me, you were like the barometer. You were able to bring that feeling to the council table or to briefings, and that was always appreciated. You always told a good yarn, whether it was council related or not, and I suppose that's the benefit of being in the industry that you're in. But I was lucky enough to be interviewed by you some years ago on Radio Dunedin, and the silver-tongued Neil Collins made me feel very relaxed. I think it was probably the first interview I'd done on radio, so Neil took me through, no problems at all. But he revealed to me afterwards that when he has callers ringing in about issues and that sort of thing, and if someone rang from north of the city, he would often just slip in and he would say, "Oh, how's that Councillor Noon going?" And before they even had a chance to reply, he would say, "He's not a bad bloke, is he?" And often he would sort of build up a bit of momentum before the next election. So I probably need to thank you for the few extra votes that you got me every 3 years. So all the best, and thanks, Neil.
Councillor Weatherall.
Thank you, sir. A number of the comments have been passed. I'll be brief, but Neil, you've had a tremendous listening year. And one of the things that not only inside the council but outside, that if you've had a tough day in this chamber or somewhere else, Neil would sense it and he would phone home. Not necessarily talk to me, but talk to Anne and just ensure that the communication was working. And Neil, I do appreciate it, because that's the communication that happens inside and outside the organisation. Paul has spoken about the boys here today. Dad's been pretty busy for a long time, guys. You're going to get some time back with him now. And I know with your families and your own connections that he'll be working forward and looking forward to that. Neil, I guess we are in a similar sort of decade, a little bit apart, but your health hasn't been marvellous. Neither is mine, I guess, and we understand each other and support each other. So having that confident ear and that ability just to be able to share a moment is truly appreciated.
Councillor Butcher.
I'm going to miss all your funny jokes, because you used to roll some really good ones out, and talking about in the snug. I was never in the snug, but when Richard Walls was here, we quite used to hop into the Ryan Arnold room and have a few wines after, or a beer after the meetings, and that was fun. And you always used to be entertaining us with your, oh yes, those nice little jokes that you used to tell us. So I'm going to miss that. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind comments. A bit like being at your own wake, isn't it, in a way? Sort of. Well, I hope these boys have run out of film, but if not, apologies for what's ahead. In fact, I'm so excited, I can't wait to hear what I've got to say. As Colin just alluded to there, I survive these days thanks to medical science and a couple of brilliant miracle men in Richard Bunton and Jerry Wilkins, cardiologists, 5 stents and 3 graphs or bypasses keeping the motor running. So the point of that comment is that I don't do stairs like I used to. So in the last while anyway, I've opted quite often, because I'm on a bit of a pressure run from the radio station to get up here in time, and I opt to take the lift right down at the Octagon and come in through there. And you wouldn't believe it today, as I got in, pushed the button and turned round, and as the doors slowly were closing, I looked straight ahead, and in the corner just down there was a mobility scooter with a white stick and a flag up the back. And I thought those buggers, they've got me a going away present. At least it wasn't. Yes, so getting elected here in 1989, and that in itself is a thrill. You think you want to get in and pay the voters back and make an impression. And what happened, and I'm going to reveal something that I know a couple of you know the story, but I kept it pretty quiet for 22 years. In fact, I kept it totally quiet for 22 years. Not long after I was elected, there was a deputation of a small group of residents from Tahuna came round to my front door, rang the bell, and they said they wanted to talk to me, and they, in effect, were people who were suffering from the smells of what became known around town as Poo Palace, the treatment plant out there. And it was giving off odours that poor old Brian Turner was beside himself trying to get resolved. And so they had this little committee of residents. So I became their spokesman. We had meetings, and we tried to thrash out this way of solving this dreadful smell, especially in the summertime. And so we were getting to, it wasn't quite like we do annual plans today, but they're a little different, but we still had budgets. And I knew that what they had come up with, that is Brian and everyone else, and Trevor Buchanan, who was the then water manager or drainage manager, was a soil filter. The soil filter is basically a few pipes and things, tons and tons of wood chip, black paper or something, and that the pipes were going to feed into that, and the smells and things would dissipate in there. End of story. But to do that, or to get that underway, needed a few bob. So in those days we had council meetings that started at 4, you'd have a break for tea, and then you'd come back. And this day in February of what must have been 1990, I suppose, or but it might have been the year after, but it was a really hot February afternoon and evening. And I had devised this stupid now in retrospect idea of buying a little stink bomb from a magic shop. And if those of you can remember, you used to break these things at a party and flick them under the table, and it wasn't long before you cleared the decks. And I thought, I've got to make my point. I've got to make my point when this item comes up. So we had our tea, we came back, and I found something sharp down in the Edinburgh room, because I thought, I've got to break this quite tough little plastic thing. So anyway, it's coming up, and it's right on, just about on cue, and I finally pierced it and just flicked it underneath. And I thought, right, this will cause a bit of a smell. And then I'd go up and say, now that's what those people have had to put up with. That's what they can't put their washing out and go to do the whole bit. But you wouldn't believe it. This thing clouded, and you round the room, they're going like this. Staff was starting to look sideways. The chairman was, we open a window? Or, someone had to say it sooner or later. Could we open a window? So they eventually opened a couple of windows, but it got worse. And it was just vile. It was the most terrible smell you could imagine. So before long, they said, oh, there's a gas leak in the building. So everybody out, and they all ended up down in the Octagon, standing on the footpath in the Octagon. Bloody fire brigades arrived. Guys with gas marks and cylinders and things are all running up and all around this building. And I'm out there thinking, I'm feeling this small. So embarrassed. I thought, oh, I can't own up to this. No way. I'm not going to tell you. I know what it is, but I'm not going to tell you. We were out there for the best part of an hour before someone said, no, it's all right now. We can't find anything. So we all got back in, so I did give him a chance. That's what those people in Tahuna, they so we got the big tick and we carried on. So just from, flicking the thing and then next minute, everybody was out on the street. And that sort of started me off on this rich and at times frustrating but always rewarding journey as a Dunedin City Councillor. And I just think, thinking back on a couple of the lighter moments around the table at particularly council meetings now that we're here today, and I won't mention any names, some of you may detect who I'm talking about, but there were a couple of things happened. Over there was a councillor who had been around a long time, and he knew standing orders backwards. In fact, he pretty well wrote the book that we probably still use today with a few definitions. And that councillor, when he rose, I detected in the last year or two that he was here, he developed a trick with his tongue that he could flick either the top denture or the bottom denture, and he could turn it right over. Now, John sat next to him, so I think you know who I mean. He could flick this denture and it would come back, and that was quite a nice little trick. Anyway, there was a debate going about something, and he called out, "Point of order!" And, well, everything stopped, and he said, I would ask councillors to refer to standing orders, page 44, 331.2. Because we all went down for the book, and out we come, we're all flicking over trying to find this thing, and he stood quite proudly waiting for us. And what he was, the teeth went up. But this time of all times, they didn't come back. Lodged sideways. And if you were trying to get your teeth with your tongue, with those dentures, you know what I mean? And that was really quite entertaining, because he, in the end, had put his hand in and pulled them out and put them back in again. There was another councillor about that same era, and this woman was particularly good with the English language. She was a stickler, really, for correct pronunciation, and wouldn't hesitate to correct you if you were mispronouncing something. And she also wasn't, I don't know if we had microphones then, but she wasn't beyond saying, "Could you speak up? I cannot hear nor understand a word you are saying." So of course that was one thing that you had to do when she was in the room. And the mayor, on one occasion, there was a little working party group being put together, 2 or 3 people. It's one of those things that come up from time to time, as you'll know, councillors. You don't really want to be on it. You don't want to be on it. And you hope no one's going to put your name forward or anything like that. And nobody was prepared to nominate anybody else, so we were hoping this thing would just move on and pass. But the mayor, for his sins at the time, said, councillor, whose name shall be withheld, this may well suit you. In fact, I feel, how about I nominate you as the chair? Would that be something you would like to do? Her reply was instantaneous, and it was brilliant. And she just said, "Me? I would rather wipe my bottom with a brick." Which we dined out on for years, and I can still remember. There was another councillor over there who'd been there for quite a while too, and she had a way of irritating the then mayor. She could irritate him quite easily. And one night after we'd had a meal and maybe a drink and came back, there was some big topic of renown being debated. And she would get up and was stirring this debate along, and the mayor was a bit of a stickler that when he stood, you sat down. And you're not quite so tough on that, but he was, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the gavel is still up there that used to be there. Is that it? It is, great. Because he told her to sit down at one point, and she had a way of when she would sit down on instruction, they're still talking, but and he yelled at her, "Sit down when I'm speaking!" And she looked up, and for her sins, she happened to say, I didn't see it. I didn't notice you were standing. And of course, the mayor was so incensed by that, he smashed the gavel and it broke. Bop, bop, bop. So it was a delicate moment, so I just quietly went over and gave one piece to her and one piece to the mayor. We had, as someone's alluded to here earlier, characters along the way, you know, not eccentric so much, but people who add a certain amount of colour to council. And we had one a few years ago, and for some reason he got in to be a councillor, but he just had no time for any of the formality, for none of the rules or regulations at all. And he was quite a provocative character. He thought that the way we formally did things was a whole lot of bunkum, so he didn't really take to that very much. So as a result, he was forever upsetting chairman or the mayor or whoever, and he just seemed to do it so easily. He just annoyed everybody, and he had no sense of style about him either. He would come into our council meetings, sometimes in old pants and jeans or something, scruffy old jersey, kick his shoes off and sit there with big thick work socks, slouched back, and quite often would mumble, and often he'd be asked to either be quiet or say what he said, and he always had a bit of something to say back. So he did upset a few people. I never really got offside with him, but I was disappointed in his attitude for some of those things that he did. One night it came to a head when he went out to the lounge out there and came back with a stubby and was swinging the beer and plonked the beer down in front of him. And we just don't bring beer into the house, into the chamber. So the mayor at the time ordered him to take it out or desist, you know, from drinking. And he decided he would take the empty bottle out and kept lugging away on it. And so she ordered him out. And he just sat along here, and I must have been looking at him and frowning or tut-tutting or something. And he had all these files, and as he did, he swept them and he looked at me, and I was like that to him, and he said, "Oh, don't think it, say it." And it's one of those moments like Sid's quote, and I just said, well, I was just thinking that if you had a brain and they took it out and put it in a bird, it would fly backwards. It seemed to do the trick, and he went home. He went home. The last one of the characters in here, for a time there in my early days, and John will remember, we had councillors who were both on the regional council and on the city council. They could sit on both, clip the ticket both ways. And one of these councillors was a big, blustering sort of fellow in the legal profession. It wasn't Michael Guest, it was another fellow, and he used to bustle into meetings either late or he would leave early. No, it wasn't him. Oh, wasn't him? And he was a big fella, and he sat next to me, and he had a big leather suitcase, as legal people seem to have, and he had this habit of crunching his bag down over half of my papers. You know how territorial we all get, and this great suitcase would go across there and out. And he also had a method of getting away early. There's a door just around here that was quite a good, quick little escape route, and if he timed his exit, he would wait till someone over there was in the middle of a debate or something, and he would gather his papers a bit before that and put the suitcase down on the floor, and while that person was talking, up with the case and away out the door, and he was gone. And I remember thinking, this guy needs to be taught a lesson. But anyway, he was doing it one night, and the suitcase went down. As he did, he cracked me on the ankle with it under here. Ooh, that is sore, you know. So while that person was talking, he must have been planning his escape. I looked underneath to shift the bag off my ankle, rubbing my ankle. As I glanced down, I noticed one of the little toggles on the suitcase was up. And I thought, will I? Won't I? Won't I? Oh, what the hell? And I unflicked the other one. So this time came, saw his chance, grabbed the suitcase, he got to there. 900 legal papers, 600 council papers. I thought, oh, didn't manage to do your suitcase up, but there you are. In my time, I've had the great pleasure of working with 4 really good mayors, and Richard Francis Walls, I see over here, Suki Kawa, never known how she pronounced that, Turner, Peter Wing Ho Chin, and David Charles Cole. So there's royalty in your name, David and Charles. Good mayors. And 4 very, very dedicated people to the city. Also 4 very good CEOs. The first one was a Merv Montacute from England, and he was followed by Murray Douglas, followed by Jim Harland, and followed now by Paul Ebenezer Scrooge. Boyo, Gary Evans. And you know what a Gary Evans is, don't you? Orders over there, and they've been delightful people, and even in your short space of time, there's something I could drop on you, but I won't. Just not tonight. Looking back and serving on outside boards as we do as councillors, that's been very rewarding. The Fortune Theatre, the Region of Way Back, Age Concern Forever, and the Art Gallery Society, places like that's been good. I've been personally satisfied to have got a few things done. Those Olympic plaques down there in the Octagon, that was an idea. Served on the civic committee that got the initial Shanghai delegation, the Shanghai sister city, through, and that was a fairly tortured exercise at the time. Being on committees that saw clean water and wastewater put into the city, very important. CCTV cameras around in the Octagon, even though I nagged the council for about 8 years, but they are, I'm sure, proving their worth. And as Sid mentioned, the over 75s parking, don't ever throw that out in subsequent councils, because I'm just getting closer and closer to that one. My sons over here, Mason and Chris wasn't even born when I came on council, but they've been great, and I'm proud of them, and I hope that they are proud of me and what we've achieved. And they never really knew much about my job as a council unless they read it in the paper or something, and that's the way it's always been. Council business was council business, a lot of confidential stuff, and they never asked, and they were never told. I want to thank the council staff that I've had dealings with over the years, and they've always been great, all the staff here. Thank the media too, because I know it's part of the world the other world that I live in, and I thank them for that and their dedication. To thank to the voters, yes, the voters that have returned me for so many elections over the years, and I hope I've repaid them in some way. And I really want to wish that the incoming council all the very best. Those of you who are standing again, I want to thank the rest of the colleagues for just the companionship, the friendship, and just for being around each other. I think we all are an eclectic mix when we first come in, but sooner or later we all look after each other one way or the other, and that's the beauty of being in a job like this. We are put here by people from outside, elected representatives, and we get there and we have to serve the city and serve it to the best of our ability. I hope I've done that, and I hope that the city goes forward. I mentioned those 2 boys over there, but they are the future of the city, and one's just finishing a BCom at the university, and the other is in the job market. Both of them are in the job market, both of them having difficulty finding work, and we've got to work hard as a group, as a council, to get the city cracking, to get it ticking over, so that people can stay here and build a life in the future, well into the future. So thank you for everybody and for the kind words, and once again, good luck for the next triennium. Whoever is standing again, I'm sure you'll all get back in, and for your companionship over the years, and to you, your worship, and you, Mr. Orders, sir, and those of you who spoke so kindly before, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. I'm going to put the motion of appreciation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Neil.
My son wants to know if this will be worth anything on Trade Me.
Years during the period 1998 to 2013. Council extends sincere appreciation for the services rendered and every good wish for the future. Councillor Weatherall has been the hearings panel chair throughout the 15 years that he has served on council, and he, without doubt, has been an utter professional and a stickler for due process. But at a more human level, he's always ready to lend support and assistance to other councillors and to myself, and I greatly appreciate that. Now, in addition, I know from attending the staff function for Colin that he's extremely fondly regarded by any staff he has worked with. So I'd invite councillors who wish to speak. Councillor Hutz.
Start by seconding the motion.
No.
It's strange, you make many acquaintances along the way at council, and then you meet a lot of people that you would call a friend, and then you meet somebody like Colin, who you would call a genuine friend and support person. And Colin's been that to me over the last 15 years that I've worked with him on consent hearings. And you're right, Dave, you look at the professionalism that he's displayed and the knowledge that he's got of the rules around the district plan and the rules around the Resource Management Act, and the way he involves people in the hearings to relax them and make them feel part of the process that we're trying to undertake and walk them through the different steps that we have to, as normal, follow. And I think by starting to encourage people to use Christian names in that process, it's been very, very important. And I think some of the decisions that we've made have been because of the attitude of Colin and the way after the process when we've had appeals, the way he has gone back and talked through all of those issues and trying to reach a solution for council that doesn't involve any expenditure of money. And that's a very, very important skill that I'm very sorry that we're losing around the council table. We look at Colin's wife Anne, who's sitting here behind me, and it's always been Colin and Anne. And all the things that Colin has been doing, you know, whether it's with the Surf Club, whether it's fundraising out at Brighton, Anne has always been there to support Colin. And that's very, very important that you've got that level of support to enable you to do the things that you have to do, which sometimes can be very time consuming. Neil's just made the comment about Chris and Mason and how we've got to look for the next generation to work in the city, the next generation to lead the city. Colin has succeeded, and Anne have succeeded very well in doing that, and the niche that Scott is carving out for himself in local body politics and the contribution that he's making to this city, I think just shows the measure of the family that we've had working alongside of us over that period of time. I know you haven't kept the best in health, Colin, so hopefully all that's behind you now, and all the best for the future.
Councillor Wilson.
I've just written down some words which might make me think of Colin, Action Man, and that in many, many ways. Well, his work in the community, it's just all go, and I've seen him leaving here after long drawn-out council debates to go and do something for the community without going home and probably not eating, and that's why he occasionally got sick. But he's an action man, and before I knew him when I was on community board in Strathtyre, and he was certainly one to aspire to emulate. And then as a councillor, before I was a councillor, he was the go-to person for the issues that I ever had, and he was fantastic. He put up with a lot, and I appreciate that, but you knew you'd get something, some action out of him, and he was fantastic. His work in the community has been inspirational, and his work with the Surf Lifesaving, I've worked with him, and I should have also acknowledged, sit on the Otago Museum Trust board, and the work behind the scenes and which aren't seen has been fantastic. I put down positive. I mean, even during the darkest days of Harbourside and our new councillors challenging him every step of the way, with that, he was positive, polite, professional, respectful, and fantastic. I'd like to thank, going back to his community work, I think he was the last president of the Otago Rugby Football Union that had a return to financial success story, so thank you very much for that. And so his governance skills have been very, very wide. He's been a great teacher when it came to resource management issues, and I've really appreciated the 6 years of tuition he's given me. He's given me the opportunity to get involved, and he's just empowering and allowing me to be involved has been fantastic, and I really, really appreciate everything I've learned from you, and I think still will learn from you along the way, and really appreciate that collegiality which he's shown, which has been outstanding. There's suggestions at times of caucusing and colluding at this council, which I find bizarre, but I can tell you that of all the councillors I've shared time with in this last 6 years, it would be Andrew and Colin who I've spoken to most, and I really appreciate how supportive he has been in that 6 years on that time. He's a battler, is the other word I've written down. He'll do anything and battle anything if he thinks that's important, and his sincerity and his integrity and his fighting for the less fortunate or the represented has been fantastic. And if there was someone I'd say has given it far more than 110%, Colin, I'd just like to acknowledge you as someone who I could only emulate in the 10th degree. So thank you very, very much for everything you've done.
Councillor Bazet.
Colin, I'm really sorry to see you go. I know you've had some health problems and you've battled away with them over the last couple of years, but hopefully you've got them behind you now, and I hope you have a long and happy retirement from council with your family. Colin Weatherall has devoted, I think, pretty well all his life to the community. I can remember Colin when I was a surf lifesaver at Brighton, and that, I can assure you, goes back a long time. And Colin was working at the club at that time. So he's been a servant to the Brighton community. He's been on the Otago Rugby Union, as somebody mentioned, for many years, and a stalwart there. He served on the community board and a representative of the Saddle Hill ward for a number of years, and then on to the DCC. So he really has devoted a good part of his life to the community, absolutely unselfishly. And I admire him for that. It's been, I would think if you talk to Colin about it, he would say it was a pleasure. And the way he handles himself and the way he goes about his work, it looks like a pleasure, and I think it is. But to others, it would be a lifetime of really, really hard work. So Colin, well done. I think you've been a wonderful servant for the community, and I wish you all well for the future.
Councillor Butcher.
Well, we've been comparing grandchildren photos probably for the last few years. Colin and I just put me at the post with his latest one before. I've got a few more than you, but I think we're catching up. And I think that it's going to be awesome for your grandchildren and Anne and your family to get you away from this table, get your health back so you can spend some good quality time with those little darlings over the next few years, because boy, they deserve you. They really do. I want to say also thank you for giving me the chance to be on the consents panel. You're probably a bit scared of me, apparently, at the beginning. And I think because you are maybe a bit concerned about my environmental stand, you still decided that you would give me a chance to go on consents, even though you've been thinking, oh, she's going to say no to absolutely everything. But we didn't. I said no to one thing that we didn't agree on, but most of the time, with your guidance, I think that we made some really good decisions. Once again, I think the decision that you, me and Bill made on John Wilson Drive was the outcome for the community. We heard a lot of pain from some people during that time, but we also heard a lot of inspiration about what people loved about that place, and I think that guided that whole process really well, and the city and the citizens, I'm sure, will appreciate that in years to come.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. My first year on council was Colin's first year, and we both trained together for consent hearings. And in that first year, we both were learning from one another. And then a stroke of luck in my way was that Councillor Benson Pope was elected to Parliament, and I became chair of P&E. And at the time, the advice from the Ministry of Environment was that you don't make the policy and you don't sit and judge on it. So I withdrew from the consents hearing process, and but Colin and I maintained a very good relationship, because in my way it was important for me as chair of P&E to understand what the issues were that were coming before the resource consents hearings, so that if there was a number of issues coming up repeatedly, then maybe we need to look at the policy in the district plan, because if they were being challenged so often, there was an issue in the community. So we had a very good relationship, and as Colin briefly mentioned, in the district plan, I think we had 280 odd appeals, and we split those up between them, and we worked with one another, even though he dealt with his and I dealt with mine. We talked about the issues, and I don't think we got turned over in the court on anything. I think we resolved the whole lot. There was nothing challenged and nothing turned over, so that was quite a feat. From my perspective, he's been a rock for this council. He's very strong on process. He understands process. He understands what can be challenged in a hearing process, and that experience is hard to gain. And I just make a plea for the incoming council that Colin's still a young man, and he carries a wealth of experience, and I urge you to look at him as a commissioner in the future, to carry on that experience that he's gained, and in doing so he can actually upskill and train new councillors. So all the very best, Colin, and I hope you enjoy your time from here on.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Worship. Not really sure where to start, because in my view, Colin's carried on a legacy that was started by Brian Arnold and Anne Tuvey in terms of the administration of the district plan. And Colin, in my view, I didn't see the other two operate in consent hearings, but in my view, Colin's taken it to another level, and others have spoken about Colin's ability in that forum, and I know for a fact that the respect for Colin, well beyond the boundaries of this city, is right up there, and he's been in demand to represent other local authorities administering their plans. So the sorts of words to describe Colin, in my view, are the master when it comes to running hearings, consent hearings. He's a diplomat, he's a mentor, he's got all those attributes that people look up to, and as I say, it is a legacy, and I just want to reflect on a couple of consent hearings, because over the 15 years I probably spent, no disrespect to Colin, but I probably spent more time on consent hearings with Colin than I did with probably my wife or my pack of dogs, but I certainly prefer the consent hearing environment. But reflecting on a couple of consent hearings that caused a considerable amount of concern in the community, I can recall the mainland poultry hearing held at the Eastern Rugby Club, and Richard Walls was the other member, and because of the I suppose the clash of concerns in the community, Colin had to request that the local policeman attended the first couple of hours of that consent hearing because the tensions were so high within the community. But Colin just carried on with the process and ensured that everyone had their say, people were heard, and I think that's the other thing, is that it doesn't matter whether Colin's dealing with the applicant, the submitter, the developer, whatever hat they're wearing, he seemed to be able to deal with whatever issue was thrown to him in an orderly fashion that still created the right environment for decision making. And I suppose when you get to the decision making, Colin he's a wise head, and he can sum up situations relatively quickly, and he's great at being able to get the best out of other hearing panel members, other council colleagues. He encourages others to participate, and I'll certainly remember that. Cheers.
Councillor Stokes.
Colin, it's really sad to see you go, and apologies to the other councillors who are retiring for my having to step out of the meeting. I had a very riveting audit committee meeting that I had to be at, so please accept my apologies. But Colin, you're one of the councillors that in my time on council I've looked at and said, this is the kind of councillor I want to be seen to be. You're straight, you're honest, you have integrity, and it worries me that during this election campaign some of our prospective new councillors have drifted into playing the man, not all, not being truthful, and I think fundamentally for us around this table, and you demonstrate it so well, it's all about integrity, honesty and hard work. And I've watched through my limited 6 years on council your efforts to get the right decisions through one of the hardest parts of council, which is hearings. You have a rule book, you have to work within that rule book. There's law which can challenge you, and you get through that path with decisions that are robust from the committees that you chair. And I think that's an incredible record, because the work that you do and the hearings panels that you convene do actually determine where our city's going and how it's going to look in the future. So all the best. I do hope we see you back as a commissioner, and I will continue to watch your career because it isn't over yet.
Thanks, Chris.
Councillor Collins.
Colin, I don't need to add to what's been said very much at all, just to tell you that I truly do value and admire you in your community work, in your council work, your positivity, everything that you do. You seem to be so damned enthusiastic about it. In fact, if there was an unofficial mayor of Brighton, an unofficial mayoress, it's Colin, Weatherall and Anne. And even when you ring their home and get the answer phone, he'll ask you to leave your name and number. And by the way, it's another wonderful, brilliant, sunny day in Brighton. And you get that enthusiasm in everything that you do. And certainly, again, referring to my sons over there and my former wife, Delane, we've spent many a happy hour or two at your crib out by the water, whatever it's called. But sorry? Tari Mouth, isn't it? Yeah. Out there, and socially you've just been a gem in my life. In fact, I was just thinking before that some of my really best friends are in this room today, and you're absolutely one of my true and valued friends. I appreciate everything you've done for me in the past. You and I should get together again more often. I've got a few pills I can swap with you. But thanks very much.
Councillor McTavish.
I don't know if I can follow that. Colin, one of my first memories as a councillor, I got a phone call a couple of days after we were elected. I still was in a bit of shock, and the Otaru delegation was coming even before we had our inaugural meeting. And I was terrified because I had no idea what I was walking into, and all of these suits and all of these people that I didn't know, and I was required to be a city representative. And one of the very first people, in fact probably the first person that came up to me as I walked in the door of the art gallery was you, and you gave me a good pat on the back and you said, "Oh, welcome on board," and you shook my hand with enormous enthusiasm, and you said, you know, the first thing that you said was, anytime you need a hand, buddy, anytime you need a hand, just give me a call. I'm always there, anytime, day or night, I'm there, give me a call. And that has been the case for the last 3 years, and I've really appreciated that support, and it was there from day one. And I think that it's testament to the fact that so many people have acknowledged that today, that you've been there for each and every one of us, and that's been very much appreciated. You also run a bloody good hearing, and I have really appreciated being on the hearings panel with you over the past 3 years. I've learnt so much from that process, and whether or not I'm here again for another 3 years, certainly that's knowledge that has benefited me in many ways and will guide me regardless of where I go in life. So that's appreciated. And I think just carrying on from something that Councillor Noon says, you know, every time that you speak to a hearing, you say, the important thing is that you all leave here knowing that you've been heard. And Colin, you do that really well. You know, that is something that I think anyone that has sat through one of your hearings would be able to go away and say with confidence, is that they have been heard. Whether or not they like the decision is secondary to that. And I think that's something that you can walk away with holding your head high, because I think the community have really appreciated that role that you have played in being the ears of the council through the hearings process.
Thank you, sir. Fliss, I'm not quite sure how big the hat is, but anyway, we'll just park that for a moment. To you, sir, and the councillors, the MT and all our staff, I certainly say thank you. My simple statement is this: give me the opportunity again and I'll do it again. I'd come back again tomorrow. I need to be younger to start the process, I guess, but I would. In the last couple of years, my health has been a bit of a challenge, there's no question about that. But probably 6 weeks ago tomorrow, when I woke up, or the day after, the Wednesday, when I woke up after the last scare, sat up in the hospital bed feeling quite perky, and then suddenly realised that I might have been here. I thought, shit, I've left a mess behind. I better do some sorting out. So in that regard, I've done a little bit of filing at home, dumped all the cabinets, and because Councillor Loon's due back without debate, pages 1 to 51, are they yours, buddy? Don't lose them. There's some pretty important messages. In fact, sir, there's only probably 5 simple messages that Andrew and I understand, and they're right at the front. I go from the council chamber this afternoon, or if you lift the blinds before it's dark, without any regrets. There's no question about that. We could have done some things better, or I could have done some things better, but we all can be wise in hindsight. Paul, thank you for raising the comment about the interest my family continues to have. I was lucky. I was born into a family in Lawrence that my dad was in local government. He had been a councillor, then he'd been a town clerk, so maybe that's why I understand stuff. And he introduced me to local government at a very early part of my life, extremely early. I think Neil commented about the smells in Tahuna. Well, I can remember those days, because I'm going way back, there was a night cart, and some irate customer was pretty upset, so they delivered the night cart to our back door. But unfortunately, the bottom of the can wasn't in good shape, so we collected a lot. But that's the sort of experience you get in life. I remember being in a water drain, trying to fix a leak, helping Dad and a couple of council guys out. And I probably was a headstrong 16 or 17-year-old, I'm not quite sure, somewhere around that. And I was ripping into it, and the old man said to me, there's always another way. Turn the valve the other way, it'll go off. So you learn there are 2 ways to do most things in life as you go. But the lucky part of that is that between his involvement and mine, and now Scott's, and hopefully he continues beyond, is that we've probably had 75 plus years in local government. So I think we've experienced a little bit, and it's time to move on. Can I just reflect for a moment on the 3 mayors that I've had in my time? Suki Turner, as Sid said, it was a great team. Very quickly on the Sunday night before the council on the Monday, I was on Dame Elizabeth's team to be phoned, 7 o'clock, 7:15, the phone would go, got your agenda? And the answer was, I'm going to tell you how you're going to vote. And I mean that in the kindest sense, because that's the type of structure that was operating. And when Sid and I and a number of others came to council, Andrew I think was in the same group, there was a group of views, and then there was a number of independents. And there was 5 of us, I think, were true independents. And we wavered around. Sometimes we voted with, sometimes we voted against, but we all got reminded of what our position was to be on the Monday. So that was part of life. Peter Chin, an absolute gentleman, and Peter gave me probably too much free rein. He didn't put a bloody bucket on the horse's nose at all. But I was extremely privileged for that. And the same to you, sir. We've had some big issues in the last period of time. but we've worked through them, we've communicated, I would think, well, and you've given me an absolute free head. I'll say quite publicly, I don't remember ever receiving a direction from the Mayor. He gave me a few suggestions, but never saying to me, I want you to go this way or go that way. As a planning chair, I was given absolute freedom in the best interest of the city, take as much advice as I could, and I thank you sincerely for that, Dave, because it's something I've been privileged to enjoy. And Suki had a view, Peter had a view, but you had an even more open view with me, and I acknowledge and appreciate that on behalf of myself and the work that we've done. Had a couple of mentors in my time, and Andrew spoke about Brian Arnold and Toby. The late Richard Walls. Unfortunately, Brian's not with us, and Anne's doing well down in St Leonard's, and Richard has passed, of course. Richard and I had a few battles, but we worked 14, 12 years on a hearings committee, and he was my deputy for all that time, or not quite all, then Andrew come on, but come involved as a deputy. But Rich and I were always able to work our way through the issues. And I remember sitting in a hearing, a number of you may have heard this briefly, we're in a hearing in the other room, and we had some of the noted QCs and others around town, and one's name was Len, and he was sitting there with his jacket off, and his fingers in his brace and his eyes closed. Richard leaned over to me and said, Len's having a wee sleep. And Len responded and said, my clock's still ticking. He absolutely knew everything that was going on. Probably had to keep an eye on Richard more than anyone else, but anyway, that's okay. Because Richard had a tendency to come and go with us, but he had some pretty big health problems, and not many people realised how challenging they were. But he was a true friend and supported me. And the other mentor I'm going to comment about, and not too many in the room will know him, certainly Paul and John Wilson, was the late Bill Ord. Bill, and I say mine because I'm going to talk briefly about that in a moment. Bill was a councillor for a number of years. He was a councillor in Green Island, amalgamated Saddle Hill Green Island, or two councillors, two Bills, Bill Gray, Bill Ord. Bill Ord was my councillor, or one of my councillors, while I was the chair of the community board. And on a Thursday night, 15 years and a few days ago, the phone went, and I had this rather gruff conversation come down the line. What are you doing? I said, I'm about to have my tea. And he said, no, are you standing for council? And the nominations closed on the Friday. And I think he came as a returning officer. And he briefly said to me, sort your act out and put your nomination in. Now, he was standing. He was one of the candidates that already listed. And he was ringing me up and telling me to have a go. And I did. And luck for me and the support of the people, I was lucky enough to get enough votes to head of both the Bill Ords and Bill Grays to join council. And they were absolutely superb gentlemen. I didn't want to stand against them initially. My heart said they've been great guys to me. They looked after me. They supported me as a chair of a community board. Neither of them probably liked community boards too much at all, because they were these foreign buggers that sat on the side. But we were pretty active and they were great. And all I can say is I'm sure in those days we had some pretty good fun at the political meetings, where we had 2 or 3, and there were 7 candidates I think that year. The 2 Bills and me, we looked after each other all the way through. We really didn't knock each other over. But anyway, I was lucky enough, and I thank them sincerely, the Ord family, particularly Bill, for encouraging me to have a go. I'm going to take a little bit of ownership now to some of our staff, and the most telling team right across the board, and I think I've spoken or sent a message to most of our staff today, but is our GSOs. And I say my GSOs, and I make no apology. One of the other chairs spoke about that, about how they'd worked with them. But particularly Jenny, she's been with me all the way through. Pam has been all the way through as well. Lynn and Wendy and Grace and Sandy, and I realise she's not a GSO, she's just another cut there. But they have been absolutely superb to me in the last, all the time they've been with council, but particularly during the last 2.5 years since I struck a little bit of uphill challenge with my health. The work and the support and the encouragement those ladies, in the case they were, have given me is unbelievable, and I can only say thank you to each and every one of them for supporting me on the way through. There have been times that I've got home from council and thought, bugger this place, I don't think I want to come back, but it hasn't been too often. But I want to urge you, and I wish you all good luck, the ones that are standing again for council, to come back, but please remember we're an urban rural city. 90% of our city is rural. Now, going out as Councillor Brown and myself, so there's a couple of rural councillors here, big lot on your shoulders, Guy, to encourage some of your team to come on board to help you, because you must never forget the breadth and depth that our city has. There's been a lot of comments made about planning, and I've just been absolutely privileged to be involved. You don't know how often I sat on the tail of my bum and thought, Jesus, that was close. But we got there, and haven't had a procedural challenge. Sandy and I have had a couple of conversations and a couple of people before, but we've got there. and we left hopefully in a good heart. I can't go beyond the challenges of Saddle Hill. If ever I want to see something completed, and we're almost there, I think, with the court, we're getting there. But I've had some great supporters. I've had some great people that keep me focused, my nose for 20 years focused on Saddle Hill. But I've got to say, one of my biggest challenges in this room was about 2 years ago when I came and brought you a proposal to buy Saddle Hill. Didn't have too many numbers around. Talked of $1 million to $3, $1 million to $3, what it might have been. You dumped me 11-4. Absolutely gave me a caning. Jeez, I was furious, I can say that again. But within 5 minutes, you passed a resolution to instruct me to go and handle the mediation. I thought, Jesus, that's going to be a challenge. But it was, it's great. And in hindsight, it was the right decision. You know, not always have I been right, I've said that for sure before. But to work on and save that iconic landmark and the skyline for the city is something that I want to see completed. And whoever my predecessor in the council process is, I encourage you, and I'll be there keeping the bloody eye, and I'll be haunting you if you don't. But in that regard, I want to pay tribute, sir, to a couple of people now. And this is going to surprise some of you. One is Kelvin Fisher and the other is Kim Taylor. They are the two guys that are involved with Saddle Hill on the other side. What I'd say is we don't agree. Their purpose and my purpose, or council's purpose, is totally different. But not once have they personalised that attack on me. Never once have I felt like I'm under personal pressure. I could walk past Kelvin on the street, we'd comment, we'd have a gruff passing about Saddle Hill, where it might be, but we would pass as friends on the street doing the job in the city of Dunedin. And for different reasons, of course, and that's fine. So I just want to make it known that be it they're the enemy in the case, but the reality is they are people that do understand, and I acknowledge them for their professionalism of how they've dealt with me. There's many characters that I've seen in my time, and I'm sure most of us have seen them. One of these names particularly is the Brockville Battler and Sid 80. Absolutely passionate about what he believed in and what he fought for. And he rumbled the table in this bloody room many times. But Sid would always have a kind word for you one-on-one. His health is not great, but I now get some messages through a service provider that looks after him occasionally when they transport him around. But Sid is one of those gentlemen of the world. That his heart was so strong for Dunedin, what he believed in. And I would think that the Ratepayers Association could learn to reflect on that. The other one, which a number of you won't know, but certainly Andrew Cate and a number on the committee, the hearings committee will, is Jim Moffat from Potts. Save the bloody trees, don't do what you like, you should never stop them being cut down, you can do what you like, whatever. Jim is one of those characters that I love to see in a hearing submission. And just last week, I think we had one, and he bloody lined me right up halfway through it and gave me a couple of procedural challenges and kept going until I bloody conceded that you may have a point, but you learn how to handle them. But guys like Jim and people like that are the people that make the opportunity to be involved so great. To the media, and I see that Chris is not here today, but we've had a number of media over the years. Most cases, folks, I think I've been in the same meeting that you've been reporting, so it's not too bad. Sometimes we read articles and wonder which meeting we're in, but I've got to say that I'll be careful I don't overstate this. You've been a friend to me, you've been supportive to me, and you've been fair with me, and we've never leaked the story to you, but we've been able to have some background information around things that you need to write about that hopefully may help you write some detail. So I respect your integrity, I respect your trust, and thank you for that opportunity. Well, to our CEO, this is almost my passing shot. Paul, it's been an absolute privilege. Some people will not understand a couple of conversations you and I have had. And I'm extremely grateful for that. So you go to Wales, and I go to Brighton. So we're not that far apart if you look at your map. So we won't be too far away. But thank you for the absolute privilege to be able to work with you and for you and work together in the time that you've been with the city. I wish you well. I make no apology for supporting my community, and I take ownership to that, be it at Brighton, be it Saddle Hill, be it the city, it's our people. So I believe that that's one of the privileges of life, being able to serve our people. And finally, obviously to my family, and it's been hugely supportive, far more than people realise. I don't think we quite got to the same stage as Flish in the end of being on divorce, but I've often said that I've been lucky enough to have an involvement with council and a work involvement as well part-time. It takes me out of town. I'm not quite sure how we would have managed if I worked an 8 to 5 job at home every day of the week. We're going to find out soon, I'm sure. But anyway, we enjoyed this company, we love to travel together, and as Neil commented, we have an opportunity through Anne's family at Torrey Mouth that's absolutely a privilege for my wife to go there. So I say thank you, Sarah. I look forward to going and joining Anne and the family and my grandkids and having some thrills.
I'm going to put the motion of appreciation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you all. Now, I note that the last item on the agenda... Oh, Colin!
Another item on the agenda. Oh, final meetings.
Dave's.
Now, there's one more item on the agenda, which is not even a resolution, it's some commentary. I didn't ask to put this item on the agenda, but I think it's appropriate that I reflect a little on the triennium, not only on my own behalf, but on behalf of Council, because this has been, I believe, undoubtedly a very challenging term for the whole of Council, both at a personal level for me as mayor, but also at the Council level. This Council inherited the most controversial project in our community for many years, the Forsyth Bar Stadium, while it was still being completed. And in addition, a number of other major capital projects were on the go simultaneously. And these have, however, all been brought to completion this term very successfully and are performing extremely well. Toitu is the standout, reaching its annual projected visitor numbers in 6 months. But both the stadium and the town hall complex have drawn widespread acclaim, and they will go from strength to strength. The challenges this council faced were overwhelmingly financial. From the start, this council faced rapidly rising projected rate rises, exacerbated by last-minute shortfalls in our council company's capacity to pay the level of dividends that council was expecting. So as a result, council gave our incoming chief executive a very demanding brief, and the measures he required profoundly altered the whole organisation. However, staff and as well as elected members have responded really well and have ridden the changes throughout council very well indeed. And when the financial realities became clear, councillors quickly appreciated the need for discipline and stuck to it. And being able to meet our much lowered rate rise targets is testimony to that, whilst maintaining service levels. It would be fair to say that at the outset of this term, council was somewhat divided. But in the main, we very quickly pulled together to confront those emerging issues and challenges. And I want to thank council in general for the overall collegiality that we achieved within the first few months of this term. However, in addition to facing those challenges, this council could be more than satisfied with a whole lot of other achievements. A considerable amount of work has been got through in this term. Just a few examples. Our digital strategy is now being implemented. It's acknowledged as the most innovative and comprehensive in the country. Our economic development strategy, also innovative and being a partnership, and the implementation period really is just bedding in now. We're just getting on with it. We've handled the debt that emerged or that was built up and how we deal with it extremely well, and we've now got a handle on it. And as Councillor Brown mentioned, a financial strategy going forward that we can rely on. We recognised some of the opportunities in the city with the warehouse district, and Councillor Butcher referred to our recognition of heritage, our heritage inheritance. Our social wellbeing strategy was bedded in just when central government decided councils don't really need them. But we've got a very good one anyway. We've comprehensively opened up communication channels and info flow. Witness the TV cameras in the council chamber and in committee rooms. We completed a whole consultation on the spatial plan, a real big picture vision for the city going forward. Our cycleway network is taking Dunedin into the 21st century. We overhauled the governance of the council-owned companies, and as their latest annual reports have shown, that effort has borne fruit very quickly and productively. And much of that has not been achieved just by council, but by pioneering partnerships across the community. Our economic development strategy was created with a range of partners. The art and culture sector proactively sought council cooperation, and we're seeing the fruits of that in a number of initiatives. Cycling groups have been really helpful in developing some of the safety measures that NZTA, for instance, has brought to us. Community boards and communities have contributed and witnessed the Waitati Library and the Portobello Jetty, where the communities got behind the efforts and raised money and provided the impetus. Our Community Resilience Forum, which has brought into focus the need to focus on future community capacity and resilience, and the number of sector groups, or the number of interest groups that are represented on that is quite staggering, and the contribution they make. The Harbour Cone Working Party, that is largely community peopled, helped bring things to a successful conclusion there. So our wider community has played a big part in the successes and achievements of this council. So I'd like to thank councillors for their support this term and for the unstinting assistance of staff, especially the governance team and the chief executive, whom I personally could have not, without whom I could personally not have maintained momentum or even equilibrium at some times. It is not often overtly recognised, especially by some media commentators who tend to default to a curmudgeonly negativity whenever discussing council. But the Dunedin City Council has extremely talented, committed and hard-working staff. There, I believe, in my travels around the country on National Council, they are as good as anywhere in the country. This city is very well served by our staff. So again, my thanks to staff and to all of you who have contributed through this term. In general, this term's council can be proud of a considerable achievement across the board. The next council and mayor will have a solid, stable foundation from which to implement and grow the various initiatives put in place over the past few years. And I would like to thank council and staff for that.